All right. Welcome to the Finance and Audit Committee of the North Carolina State Bar. Start out with the ethics statement. Members of the committee are hereby advised of their duty under the State Ethics Act to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any matter coming before this committee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or an apparent conflict of interest. So we'll move into the first matter. And along with me, there's only two other members of the committee, so I would ask for some participation here. We have the proposed minutes of the committee's meeting on January the 14th of 2021 that are in the packet. I hope everybody, I think they looked in order to me, and I would entertain a motion to adopt those minutes at this time.
Move we adopt the minutes.
And Barbara, do I have a second from you? I will take that as a yes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Even without Barbara's vote, it passes. Is Barbara on here?
I am. I was just muted.
I'm sorry. Okay. Well, I don't mean to. I'm not ignoring you, so.
Yeah, that's all right.
All right.
And Marcy's in now.
I'm sorry?
Marcy is in now.
Okay. All right. Marcy? Hello?
She's muted at the moment, but she's joined.
Okay. All right. All right. We want to go forward with the presentation of. I'm sorry. Yeah, Marcy.
You said hi. It's Marcy.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Sorry. I'm driving, so I don't have my video on.
Neither do I, and we're better for it from my standpoint. So, presentation of state's independent audit looked like it was pretty clean. Alice, do you want to start out and then present our guest for that?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, Darren. So we are pleased to have our longtime auditors from Bernard Robinson here today, Sandy Newell, Tina Smith, Ryan McGee, and we also have another person from their organization, Brandy Cawthorn, who is here observing and learning. Yeah, I'm very pleased. It is a clean audit. And in my previous meeting with Sandy and Ryan, and I don't think Tina could be at that meeting, but we had a preview of the audit, and they were very, very, very complimentary of Jaya and Jaya's fine work in terms of organizing the documents that they needed to review, providing what they needed. I can tell you that this is kind of a sea change from the way things used to be pre-Jaya. So we are extremely grateful to Jaya. I think we've also improved some of the ways we do things, which makes it easier to get those records and documents to the auditors. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over. I think Tina is the lead on this and is going to explain the audit to you. I think she's going to do that at a fairly high level, unless there's questions or there's any need for us to do a deeper dive. And then I'll mute myself so it won't interfere.
Tina, I think you're muted.
Okay, good morning. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for having us this morning. As Alice indicated, we'll be reviewing the 2020 audit of the State Bar with you. The audit reports consist of the governance letter and the audited financial statements. And I'll be reviewing the governance letter with you, and then Ryan will step in and review the financial statements with you at a high level. So the governance letter is required by our auditing standards to communicate certain information about the audit to you as the governing body. And this letter is in draft form, but as soon as the audit is approved, it will be issued along with the financial statements. So to let you know, this audit does include all of the programs of the State Bar, and they are identified in the first paragraph of this letter. Under the significant audit findings, we let you know that the significant accounting policies are fully disclosed in Note 1 to the financial statements. Those policies did not change from the prior year, and there were no new policies that needed to be adopted in 2020. Following that, we let you know that there are certain accounting estimates included in the financial statements. We review those estimates to be sure that they're reasonable and consistent in the methodology with the prior years. And we list those significant estimates in the letter. They consist of depreciation. And then on page 2, the allowance for doubtful accounts receivable and the current portions of restricted cash and the grants approved but unpaid. Those are all estimates. And then we let you know there were no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. As Alice mentioned, the audit was very clean. It went very smoothly. And we do certainly appreciate the hard work, Jaya, that you put in providing us with all the information we need and in answering our questions. The audit proceeded very well and was finished in an efficient manner. Next, we talk about corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So this lets you know of any journal entries that were posted after the audit began. Those are attached to the letter. Most of those entries were identified and given to us by Jaya and Claire after the audit began. There were 2 minor past adjustments that were not recorded due to the immateriality to the financial statements. There were no disagreements with management. We will obtain a signed representation letter from management after the audit has been approved that will allow us to issue these financial statements and submit the financial statements to the required state agencies prior to the deadline. We're not aware of any management consultations with other independent accountants in order to get a second opinion. And then on the last page, under other matters, we let you know of the limited procedures we perform relative to the MD&A in front of the financial statements, and also the procedures we perform with the supplementary information that gives the financial information by each program in detail. Also to let you know, as part of the audit, we do test and review the internal controls at the bar. And this year we were focused on any changes in processes or procedures related to shutdowns due to COVID. So we're happy to report that based on our testing, we did not find any deficiencies in internal controls that would require inclusion in a management letter. So that is also a very positive result and outcome of this audit. So that is all I have to report related to the governance letter, and I'm happy to answer any questions, after which Ryan will review the audited financial statements with you.
Okay, are there any questions to that? All right, we'll let Ryan start.
Hey everybody, I'll just go over the financial statements pretty quickly at a high level. I know you guys are involved and go over the financials frequently, so I won't go into too much detail. Does everyone have copies of the statements, or would it be helpful if I shared my screen?
Ryan,
Have copies.
but they have copies, but if you can share your screen, Peter, if you can enable Ryan to share the screen, it'd be nice. I think it makes it easier for us to follow along with what you're talking about.
Okay, let me see.
Let's see, Peter, are you there? Can you let Ryan?
Yep, I've done that. I've made him a co-host. He's able
Thank
to
you.
do it.
Let's see. Does everyone see the financial statements on here? Or is it still me?
Yep, we see it.
Okay, excellent. So the statements start out with the MD&A, as Tina discussed. This is prepared by management. We don't express an opinion on it, but everything is linked back to the statements. It adds some info about the ongoings during the year and compares some numbers to last year. We scroll through that. We get to the most important part, which is the opinion, which is clean or unmodified, and notes that the financial statements fairly present the operations of the bar. On the next page, there is an emphasis in matter, just noting that these are not the financial statements of the state of North Carolina. And then we also note again that we do not express an opinion on the MD&A, but the amounts are all linked to the statements. The first statement is statement of net position. Again, this is all the programs combined, including IOLTA. You'll see that the total net position was up about 2.1 million from last year, leaving about 16.6 million in total net position, of which 12.4 is unrestricted. If you compare that to the total operating expenses on the next page of about 14.2 million, that covers a little over 10 and a half months of operating expenses in the unrestricted net position, which we feel like is a really strong stance to be in. And a lot of the expenses in the operating expenses include IOLTA grant awards and also non-cash transactions such as depreciation. So if you take those out, you're really looking at over a year worth of expenses covered by the unrestricted net position. The next statement is a statement of cash flows. It just shows the in and outs of cash and reconciles everything back to operating income for the year. And then we move on to the notes. The only new note this year was related to disclosing the contract with ThoughtSpan that was signed in 2020 for the software upgrades. And then we updated a little bit the note related to COVID and just the future operations are uncertain. But 2020 didn't appear to be significantly impacted by the shutdowns. So if anyone has any specific questions on the notes, I didn't want to dig through them in too much detail since they were all the same as last year with the exception of numbers changing. But the notes continue through page 29. And then after that, you'll see the combining statements, well, the statement of net position and statement of revenues and changes in net position is broken out for each program separately. So again, didn't want to go into too much detail, but if anyone has any specific questions or wants to look at any of the notes closer, I'm definitely happy to dig into anything.
All right, are there any questions? All right.
I'll stop sharing here.
Does that conclude the report?
That concludes the financial statement report. Again, I mean, I'm happy to jump back into any questions. I know you guys look at all the numbers in detail, so I didn't want to dive in too closely right now.
Anybody have any questions about or conversation about the audit? All right. So Alice, I guess at this point in time, we need to take up the adoption from the purpose of the Finance and Audit Committee. So it goes to the Executive Committee this afternoon. So we need to have a motion to accept or adopt the audit. Is that correct?
I think it would probably be to approve the audit.
So,
No,
I don't know, one of those A words, right?
Yeah,
all right.
I would make a motion.
Barbara,
we
do you have a
accept
second to that?
Yeah,
Accept and approve the audit.
All right.
I second that motion.
Anybody want to make any comments? I want to thank Jaya too. Boy, there's nothing like, I mean, we, at my law firm, we're a little bitty old law firm, but we have a bookkeeper that just keeps us straight. There's nothing like having being financially secure that your information is correct, especially when the auditors come around. So thank you, Jaya.
Thank you. Welcome.
So with that, I'll just call it to a vote. All in favor of adopting the audit, so that we present it to the Executive Committee this afternoon, say aye.
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 So all right, so that's approved. The next matter is consideration of the financial statements. Do you want to say anything further about that, Alice?
I'm really not going to. You have my notes. And, the story is the same story that we had last year, is that, we are actually able to save on our expenses because of COVID, because we're not traveling, we're not having in-person council meetings. We've reduced the cleaning at the building. I mean, there's a lot of weird things, but it's added up to us. I think the story's told, if you look at our operating revenues here in mid-April, we're at 57%, almost 58% of what we budgeted. So that just shows that our collection of the dues is going well. And then when you look at our operating expenses, we're at 21, maybe closely 22% of what was budgeted. So we're where we want to be. We're in good position. And this kind of bleeds a little bit into the next item on the agenda, because last year we ended up in a great net position. I think we're on track to do the same thing this year, which kind of makes the urgency to look at other sources of funding other than keep working on the dues bill a little less so. So I'll just say that and let you go ahead and address the financial statements for this quarter. We still have the folks from Bernard Robinson, and they're certainly welcome to stay with us if they want, but perhaps we can excuse them, Darren, and unless you all feel the need to be present for the remainder of the meeting.
We'd like to thank you guys for all the hard work you did on our audit. And you're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to go back to your ordinary duties. But thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you all.
much.
I just wanted to make sure, do you all want a time with staff off of the call? I know that it's a little bit more difficult in the Zoom world, but normally when we meet in person, we do offer the audit committee the opportunity to speak with us without staff. I just want to put that out there.
I don't think we need that.
Me either.
Okay,
I think with the clean audit, I think we're in good shape. Thank you for that offer.
yes. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the relationship. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alice, I had a quick question.
Mhm.
Are we about where we would expect to be on dues collection pre-COVID?
Yeah, that's for me. So if Sandy and Ryan and Tina and
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much.
Randy, y'all go ahead. Thank you very much. You're wonderful. We really enjoy working with you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, Barbara, I'm sorry. So your
No.
question was, where are we with the dues collection?
Is it about where we would have been pre-COVID?
It's better than last year at the same time period. I don't know if I didn't compare to 2019. So maybe Jaya can give us a word on that. We're feeling encouraged. I feel like, last year we had some issues because we switched to notifying people online is our first effort to collect the dues. And we think there was a lot of confusion about that. We think we're getting folks trained. So they're looking for the email now. And it's really easier for them to pay online, frankly. So we're seeing more and more people do that. But Jaya, would you respond to Barbara's question?
So, Barbara, we are behind as compared to the pre-COVID conditions. And this could be a new trend with people paying more online and they are waiting a little bit later to pay their dues. But it's still, just the second year. And so it's still, we cannot really be sure about that.
Okay, just curious. Thank you.
What are we behind, Jay, roughly? Dolly,
About $700,000. We were about $1 million behind last year. So it is better than last year.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions about the financial statements, Colin?
I have one on, and I don't know if this is something, Allison, the cost of our legal services for anticipating and responding to the public records request, do we have any idea of what that is going to cost when we get Reed's final documents to him?
Yeah, so we've been paying them along the way, Colin. And it's typically the bills, I think, have been in an area about $1,000. And I'm not sure it's a quarter or if it's bi-monthly. But Catherine can tell you, I think we're close to the end of needing their assistance with the review of, they were reviewing really a lot of the court documents and also litigation documents, and we really wanted their input. But I'll let Catherine respond more directly to that question.
You would say that most of the labor and ore has been with Catherine and her folks.
That's
that right?
correct. That's correct.
That's true. I mean, Suzanne has done an awful lot on this, and I've worked with her on that. And I've talked with Steve, and really, I think what Steve was serving two purposes. One was to look and see if they had any documents that were responsive, where they had communicated, like with the Attorney General's office, the Solicitor General's office, and that sort of thing, and to make sure that what we had already produced to read was complete. And the reason for that was because Steve had mentioned to me that he thought there were some documents that he had seen in the past that he did not see in the things that were turned over to read. And so we wanted to be sure we were accurate. So there's that. And also his advice about whether the state bar should be objecting to production of any of these documents on the grounds that there is this sort of ongoing threat that is posed by the public records request to engage in further litigation with the state bar, and therefore, are any of the documents that we have subject to a continuing privilege that would otherwise expire after 3 years. And so it's really a little bit of legal analysis and a little bit of document review. But I do think that it will be minimal.
Good, great, thank you. Do we need a
All right.
motion to accept?
Okay, yeah, I need a motion to adopt to approve the financial statements from the first quarter of 2021. Colin, is you made in that?
Sure, I'll be glad to, or Barbara, either one. Who wants to be first and second?
I'll second it.
All right.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So those are approved. So do we need to discuss item 4 at this point in time, Alice, or what's the pleasure of the other officers?
This has been on the agenda now for several quarters. It was an idea that I think the officers originally kind of heard something at one of the ABA national conferences that couple of the other states have done something along these lines. So we've been talking about it. When we started talking about it was when I was really way more concerned about this horizon that we are facing, where the cost of running the state bar exceeds our revenues to the extent that we spend down all of our reserves. As I said a few moments ago, we've really put that day of reckoning off by at least a year, and maybe 2 years, because of the way COVID has affected us. And I think also the fact that we've got a new dues bill that is in the General Assembly. I'm going to let Peter talk about that in a minute. My thinking is that maybe the urgency to have an alternative plan kind of in our back pocket, which is what I had been thinking, has been delayed a bit. So I think after the January meeting, I contacted Darren and said, do you want to go ahead and appoint this subcommittee? And he suggested, well, let's wait until the April Finance and Audit Committee meeting. So that's why I put it back on the agenda. But that's sort of the question for you is, do we need to be proceeding? And my idea has always been that this would be a committee that would be looking at, how should we do this? How would we go about doing it? How would we lay the political foundation for making the ask to the Supreme Court? But again, I question at this juncture whether we really need to go full steam ahead on this, or we can back burner it in case we need to look at this at a future point.
This is what I think. I don't think there's any urgency to it right now. I don't think that we ought to take it off our radar. I think that we need to let the dues bill work its way through. I think at some point in time, maybe Colin might have a better feel, but it seems like that the dues bill has some traction, and I think this committee would be better served to have the certainty when the dues bill's passed. I really think we ought to consider at least studying this, not for the something that's going to happen in 1, 2, or 3 years. But I think just as a legacy for the officers that are here right now, to have that in place for the future of the state bar, I think it is a viable option down the line. So that would be my 2 cents about it. Not necessarily study it now, but we need to think about that when maybe the dust settles with the dues bill.
Darren, what would you think about just tabling it and then having Alice put it on the agenda for like January?
I'm all in favor of that. I just, and we may have some clarity with the dues bill by then. I think that's a good idea, Barbara.
And that's what, I don't know if we need I don't guess we need a motion, or we could. If we need a motion, I've made it.
I think we could probably agree to just table that as a committee. Is that right? Alice?
How long do you think it might take if we did this? How long do you think the lead time we would need to, would it take us a year or longer if we decided this is what we needed to do to be able to get the proper authorization and do it?
I really don't know the answer to it, Colin. I'm kind of guessing. I think what we need to have on a committee or subcommittee that would study this is people who have some influence with the court primarily. And so we need people who understand sort of the political landscape. What I was envisioning that we would get, first of all, we'd look back and see how the Client Security Fund was done. We need to sort of understand historically how that's worked in the past. And so there would be study of that, and then study of kind of how the court is functioning, our relationship with the court, and laying that groundwork. But once we start doing that, we're either going to know that the court is going to support us in this, the Chief Justice is going to support us, or they're not. So in a way, by setting up the subcommittee, they're going to kind of get to a point where, we either move forward or we just kind of sit there in the water. So I'm thinking, at most it might take a year to lay the groundwork. We have to get court order, and we would presumably, it would be an assessment that would be part of our dues. So there's going to be that timing delay, even if the court entered an order, that, you wouldn't get it until the next full calendar year. So yeah, I think if we forecast that we're going to need it, that we need to get at least a year's lead time on it. But right now we have sufficient reserves to see us through several years. So I think, holding off and seeing what happens with this new version of the dues bill will give us a better sense of the urgency.
And remind me, is this something that the court would have the Supreme Court would have the authority to do, as opposed to needing legislative? We don't have to get legislative approval, just court authorization.
Yeah, that's why it's our back pocket option, because while it's a political issue and there's some persuasion that has to be involved in doing that, there's fewer people to persuade.
I feel like Chief Justice did indicate his support for the LAP program. Or at least his focus on the health and well-being of lawyers. So that's a little bit of groundwork that's been laid. I just don't think we'd have much credibility going in there right now and saying we need this to ensure its viability.
And I want to give kudos to Robin. If you all will recall our first meeting with the chief, the officers meeting with the chief, he mentioned wanting to have a better understanding of what we were doing in the wellness arena. And so I asked Robin to contact him. She did. She's had very productive communications with him. And Robin, if you want to pick up, if you're there, and sort of share that with the officers, I think she's laid some good groundwork, and maybe just sort of continue that, Robin, in terms of the goodwill with the court.
Sure. He's very interested. He did not know what LAP was doing. I provided him a lot of detailed information. He was familiar with the 2016 ABA study. I confirmed for him that we cite those statistics in all our CLE. I sent him a couple of links to annual reports on our website so he could get a glimpse of the kinds of things that we're dealing with. I also sent him a draft of an article that's going to be coming up to be published in a future edition of the journal, focusing on the well-being movement and how to contextualize it in the broader framework of all the work that LAP does. We had a really productive and good conversation, and Liz and Blake are his two kind of right-hand people, his chief of staff and maybe communications person. I'm not sure their exact titles, but I invited him to also subscribe to the sidebar, and they indicated I should subscribe them, which I expected, and that they'll forward on articles to him that may be of interest. So we had a really productive, about a 1-hour meeting, and so far so good.
Thank you. That's great. That's great. I think that's probably was a huge important first step. And again, I would recommend that we table it.
Yeah, I think I really have been thinking through the situation that we have a lot of irons in the fire with what's going on with the ethics committee, and this doesn't seem to be one of those urgent things. And I would like to see us get some of that stuff that we're, the irons that we have with the ethics committee, and there's some other subcommittees that we have before we take on something like this. It just seems like it would be more of it wouldn't be such a heavy lift at that point in time. So I'm okay with tabling it.
Would it make sense to maybe push it over till October? That'll be after the General Assembly session, and we may have, that'll be 6 months, and that'll give us an idea about if something's going to happen on our dues bill this session, and then whether we need to push it further out or not. You had mentioned January, and I just was thinking of October because of the session being over.
Darren, you're muted. I think you were trying to talk.
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry. I'm switching over to my laptop. I got home. I'm okay with switching it to October. What do you think, Barbara?
No, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just trying to get it entirely on your plate.
Already thinking like a past president, Barbara.
I like that.
All right. Okay. Well, so we'll just table that for October, and then, as chair, I'll take care of it from there. So, all right. So number 5, informational reports. You want to talk about the convenience fee? I guess, is that Peter or?
That's Catherine, and
Okay,
she's just going to give us a little update on that. There's been some administrative hoops that we have to jump through that the people holding the hoops don't pay any attention to us. So she'll give you just a brief update on it.
We don't need to go to executive session for anything like that, right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So I did send him the information. I think the information is going to be approved, not because he's told me so, but because it's virtually identical to what several agencies have had approved. But I have poked him several times since then, and he has not responded. I will say that when I first contacted him about this, he said, I had no idea that that was one of my duties, or words to that effect. And so thank you for letting me know. I'm going to have to educate myself about this. So I didn't expect that it would be an instantaneous kind of a response, but I still have reason to be optimistic, because it would be odd for them to deny the same thing to us that someone has approved for other agencies. So I will let you know as soon as I hear from him. And if I don't hear from him within a couple of weeks, I'll poke him again.
And it's my understanding that, and I want to be clear on this, that the Finance and Audit Committee determined that this was essentially a management decision, because technically we are supposed to be charging convenience fees if we're authorized to do that. So once we get that approval, that we'll proceed to enable the charging of convenience fees. We're still working on getting e-checks, the ability for people to pay with e-checks. We still have some tech problems on that. But if you want us, and Catherine, you chime in here, because I want to make sure we're doing what we're required to do. But if we are able to delay until the e-checks option is there, we can do that. The e-checks I think there's some minor cost to the person paying that way, but would not be as much as a convenience fee.
Kathy,
I don't think there's a requirement that we have an e-checks option. It's just that it's good PR to have an e-checks option. As long as we are offering them some way that doesn't involve a convenience fee, and we are, because they can still pay by check, even though we don't want to encourage that. So technically that's permissible.
All right, so the management staff has the authority based on our recommendation to do what you need to do. Is that fair to say, Alice?
That was my understanding, and I just want to confirm that with you all, that was the decision. I believe at the committee in January, and this is really an informational report just to let you know we're still working on that. I don't know, like we'll work through sort of the PR piece of this once we're going to do it. It may be that we'll send out a email notice to anybody who hasn't paid to let them know that we're going to put a convenience fee on a certain date, so that if they want to pay prior to that, they can do it. I don't know. We'll work through that. We'll try to do it in a way that's transparent and as friendly to the members as possible. But by the same token, we do need to start recouping some of these expenses that we have when we enable online payment.
All right, we appreciate you keeping us informed of that. It's the decision's above my pay grade, so we'll let you decide when and where to start that. So Peter, you want to talk about the bill in the assembly, the General Assembly?
Sure. So I've shared it with you before, but I just put it up on the screen real quick. We did get a bill filed at the beginning of this month that would increase the maximum allowable annual membership fee that we can assess beginning in 2023. The bill lays out the years that these amounts will be raised up to $400 beginning in 2029. The other aspect financially that this bill, a couple other things. One, it would increase the late fee to $50 instead of $30. So that right now, when looking at other states, we're one of the lowest late fees in the country. And I know that has some historic political precedent to it. So, we'll keep an eye on that, but it would raise the late fee to $50. Other parts of the bill is it would codify in statute the waiver of the fee for active duty military. Right now, that's just in our rules, and this would make it part of the statute. And it also eliminates a little language at the end that says that we don't give the names of those who are late to the clerk of court and the clerk of Superior Court until after October of each year, and that we don't submit these names to the council until it's the October meeting. By deleting this, it would give us a little bit more flexibility to begin the administrative processes on those who haven't paid a little earlier, if that was something that we wished, without having, this was something when we looked at our rules, that even if we wanted to eliminate something like the notice to show cause for failure to pay dues, we still might be struggling to with the statutory requirement that we have to wait until October to submit these names. So this would just eliminate that, and it may be something that we could begin the suspension or notice process a little earlier, so someone's not, really not getting suspended until an entire year after that they haven't paid their dues. So that would potentially give us some more flexibility in that area. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Britt and Senator Galey, who is a new member of the Senate. She's a lawyer in Alamance and Guilford, or a Republican lawyer. And the primary co-sponsor is Senator Blue, who indicated that he'd have the support of his delegation when it gets to the floor. So Senator Britt seemed to be more optimistic about the bill this year than last session. There have been some changes amongst membership of the Senate that he thinks makes this a little bit more favorable to passing. I do think, as Colin indicated, that our biggest hurdle is getting the bill out of the Rules Committee to Judiciary, whether that is the Senate Rules leadership or the Senate Rules staff, that we will have to continue to work on to get that thing moved. Once it gets to Judiciary, I'm confident it will pass and it would move back to Rules. But I'm confident if the bill reached the floor, we'd have the support needed to get it passed. So we're still going to need to work on getting it out of Rules. I'd say the chances are better than they were last session. I don't know that I wouldn't tell you that I'm betting on it. I just think we need to be prepared for this to not work again this year with trying real hard to get it to work, but I wouldn't put it over 50%. So we just need to keep plugging away. I think that the style of this bill is better. We got a lot of responses last session that we were raising the dues to $400 because it just said that the cap was $400, but we can't increase dues by more than $25 every 2 years. Well, no one read that second part and they just saw the $400 number. So I think the way this is designed at least makes it more clear what the amounts possibly could be for each particular year. I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
I would say Senator Britt's crystal ball is probably getting a little clearer because he's getting more leadership roles in the Senate. So he's probably able to forecast a little better now.
Yeah, I mean, he thinks it has a good chance. He doesn't understand. I mean, he thinks the bill makes a lot of sense. I mean, practically speaking, he says, they haven't raised dues since I've been here. It just seems like it's time to do it. But he's not in charge of the Rules Committee, and so he has to always weigh the amount of cachet and stuff that he wants to spend on moving these bills. And so we just have to keep working on that.
With our current spending and the fact that we've had savings for the last now almost 2 years because of the COVID thing, seems like 2 years now. Do we know when we might be in a position where we're going to have to dip into reserves now?
Jay and I have not done those projections in a little while, unless Jay is incredibly proactive, so she might have done them already. But I think we had like a 4 or 5 year horizon before we had these two sort of favorable years, 2020 and what I think will be the same in 2021. So my guess is that we're probably at a 4 to 5 year horizon again. Now, Jay, you can correct me or add your 2 cents worth to that.
I did do some, I looked at it last year, but I haven't looked at it recently. So let me look at that and then email you guys about what my finding is.
Okay. Have we figured out now that aren't we now a full year into UBE, have we figured out how that has affected the increase or decrease of bar membership for the state of North Carolina?
Not really. It's hard to sort out how much that's impacting. Are we getting people who are getting doubly licensed and all of that? But we can go back and see if we have more data now that will help us to assess that.
No,
we had a slight increase in membership last year. But the bar, they lowered the pass rate too. So it's, kind of hard to separate that stuff out in terms of why we had more folks. And it wasn't a huge increase, but I think some of it was because more people passed the bar exam. More people took and passed the bar exam.
Was that, when did the UBE start? Was that in February of 20 or?
20, yeah, it was 20.
That was the first one?
I think so. It might have even been 2019, Darren.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, that's something to kind of look down the, I know we keep pushing the can down the street, but at some point in time, but that'd be nice to just see where we are.
I will say this, that it looks like applications to law school are up. To law schools are up. You know, they took a serious dip there for a long time. So, and there was a concern that the COVID was going to discourage people from possibly pursuing advanced degrees. I think it may have had the reverse of that, as people were suddenly saying, well, maybe I should, you know, get another degree while I'm sitting around on my hands. So, but I do know that law school applications are up. So we may see a bump up in, 3 years from now, also in membership.
Hopefully that doesn't even mean a bump in the need for the Office of Counsel staff, especially lowering the bar passage rate. All right, so who wants to give the update on the state bar's money market pension plan? Something that just is something I can't wait to hear about.
That would be me. So we just wanted the officers to be aware of what's going on with that. Barbara is on the Plan Administrative Committee along with me and Joe Cerrone. And then we have 3 trustees for the pension plan. They're John Dorsey, Matt Bullard, and myself. We did a big transition to a participant-directed plan the year before last. And this year we are trying to make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. One of the things we discovered in working on an investment policy statement that is adopted by the Plan Administrative Committee, but that the trustees are guided by as well, and our investments are based upon, was that the investment policy statement that was being proposed made constant references to ERISA. And John Dorsey, who does pension work, pointed out that as a government plan, you're not subject to ERISA. ERISA includes a lot of very specific regulatory requirements that are designed to protect the funds in a pension plan. If you don't comply with those, you create some potential liability there. We actually had been complying with ERISA, so we'd been acting as we should have been, and more so. But the trustees were concerned about adding this extra layer of liability that we didn't need to embrace. So one of the things that we're doing is we're actually changing the plan document. And this is the core document that forms the basis for our pension. We're going to do it as a part of a normal transition that would have to occur by 2022, I think July 2022 in any event. We've been assured by the vendors that we work with that we can just sort of roll this over into this new plan. We'll go through an adoption agreement. It won't involve the council. It won't need their assistance to do that. And once we do that and have our investment policy statement in place, I think we're in good shape in terms of being in compliance with what we need to be in compliance with, and having a participant-directed plan that doesn't run some of the risks that we had previously when we were accumulating all of our the money in the plan and making investments on behalf of all of the members of the participants in the plan. There were some serious problems with doing that. So I think things are going well. I did employ an ERISA lawyer. We can't use one of the trustees as our lawyer. So I employed an ERISA or pension plan lawyer to confirm that as a government plan, we did not need to be stating that we were complying with ERISA. We wanted to make sure that was correct. And I'm working with her on the investment policy statement as well. Because of our plan documents and the way the law works, those expenses will be charged to the state bar. But so far they've been fairly minimal, and I anticipate utilizing her a little more to finish out this investment policy statement and then not needing her services any further. It's a lawyer, Melissa Weaver, who is with Brooks Pierce. I'll be glad to answer any questions, Barbara. If there's something that you feel like I should have mentioned, let me know.
No, I just would say, I think this is what you just said, that, I mean, I think for so many reasons, this was a great change for us to make. So we're headed in the right direction. And just as a reminder, Darren, to the officers, what we decided to do was, the year that we did all this, was to say we would put somebody, one of the officers on the committee, and we could change this, but what we thought was that current vice president, which I was at that time, And then I would stay on that committee for the 4 years that I was an officer. And then when I rotate off, whoever's vice president then will get the fun job of serving on that committee. It really has been interesting, I think. It's interesting to listen to our plan advisors and things just talk about the market in general and what they're seeing. So I just feel like we're in a much better place.
All right. Well, because of some personal bad planning on my part and the fact that I'm looking for a way to retire one day, could we not make it so that former officers, presidents get a pension somehow, like $400,000 a year, like the president of the United States?
There you go.
Is that doable?
I'll look into that for you, Darren. Okay. I'll ask Melissa Weaver what she thinks about that.
You'll make so much on your big speaking fees.
Yeah. Yeah, boy. I won't even get a cup of coffee for that. Okay. Okay. So according to our great planning, because of the Grand Floridian trip in October, our quarterly meeting is going to be, an annual meeting is going to be October the 5th through the 8th, which is much in advance of when we will get the third quarter financials. So I think we want to see if we can get approval from the council to grant our committee, our small committee, the authority to approve those third quarter financials. Is that right? Did I take your thunder away, Alice? I'm sorry.
No, you take it all you want. You can have it all. Yeah, we just, Jay and I both wanted to just forecast for you that we were going to have to do this. We did this last year. I don't know if you remember April last year when we first went to Zoom meetings, and because things were moving so slowly, Jaya did not get the statement she needed from the bank in order for us to be able to do the first quarter financials. So we just had the council approve granting the authority to the Finance and Audit Committee post the quarterly meeting to approve them, and that worked just fine. So I just wanted to let you know that's what our plan is for October.
We need an action.
No,
on
it's
that.
just
Okay. All right, so we're going to ask.
FYI for you.
All right. Okay. All right. We got 5 minutes, and I want to make sure that we got 5 minutes because Colin's got to get off here. The investigation and the refinancing of the mortgage, I want him to probably hear on this. Who's going to offer on that?
I'll start and let Jaya chime in. Again, I said Jaya is really proactive, and we talked about it and thought, well, we're seeing some pretty low interest rates now. So we probably, as a matter of our own due diligence, need to look into whether it makes sense for us to try to refinance again. The last page of the materials has kind of the salient points there, which are that the maximum savings net of cost, and Jaya thinks there actually may be some additional costs that we didn't account for, would be about $91,000 over the remaining 18 years of the bond. We do have an option in 2029, a put option on the bond when we can refinance the loan with no prepayment penalties at that time. And in my mind, I just don't think a savings of $91,000, which again is just more likely there would be more costs, and there would be definitely staff costs involved in that, doesn't strike me as being beneficial. And so my thinking is that we just continue to look at interest rates over time, and that we don't take any action currently.
We reassess that annually, maybe.
Just, yeah, we'll take a look at it and let you know if we see any change from the current position, which is just financially, I don't think it makes sense for us to fuss around and try to refinance now.
Okay, is there any questions about that? Jaya, do you have anything else to add?
No, Alice spoke very eloquently on that. Thank you.
I said the right thing. Darren, I do have one other thing I'd like to bring up as new business. I know Colin needs to go, but I asked Sharon to join us for this reason, and it's not quite finance and audit, but it's definitely officer territory, and that is the July meeting. Sharon and I are operating on the assumption we are going to have the July meeting in person in Asheville. She has been collecting the information on the counselors, the ones who are vaccinated. I don't know if you can tell us what percentage of the counselors have reported that they're vaccinated at this point, Sharon, but from my staff perspective, we've been keeping track of that as well. And it's, it's personal medical information. So we just have it in the aggregate, but we're at 60% of the staff is vaccinated. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. With regard to the hotel, I've asked Sharon to reach out to the Renaissance in Asheville. We worked with them to move things around so we would be back there this year because they asked us when we canceled on them last year. So I'm sort of asking them to scratch our back now with helping us figure out how we do this in a way that's safe. I pulled up the governor's most recent order. And right now, the restrictions are such that it's basically 50 people indoors, and you have to be 6 feet apart and masked. And outdoors, it's 100 people. You have to have masks, but I think you have to have be able to have a 3-foot distance between people. So that would really affect the ability to have a banquet, for example. It would certainly affect the ability to have a really large meeting. I think the grievance committee is over 50 people. And when you add in staff and all of that stuff, it starts to create some problems. But we don't know what the order will be come July. So we need to wait and see what the governor's next order is and see how we'd work with that. But we're trying to find out from the Renaissance the size of the rooms, what they've been doing with regarding to other meetings, whether there are going to be any other groups meeting there at the same time, which I think will complicate our efforts to comply with whatever the public health requirements are. But I just want to confirm that that's the desire, is that we look at how to make this in person and use our best efforts to do that. One thing I've seen everybody nodding their heads, so I'll take that we should, do full steam ahead on this. One thing I've thought about is whether we want to limit the in-person aspect to the counselors and their guests. That would mean we'd have to make some way for advisory committee members to participate in the committee meetings. But the advantage of that is if there is any potential liability for, holding in-person meetings, I think we avoid that if it's just the counselors that we might be putting at risk. And we can ask the counselors. I feel comfortable asking the counselors to report on their vaccination status. I don't feel that way about the advisory committee members. So I wanted to see whether you all thought that was one way that we might do this. And if so, then I will, that it makes me have to look at some technology options, but also smaller room options. And the other thing that I think we can do is we can look at kind of the core meetings that we want to have take place in Asheville, and the rest of the meetings we can do the week before by Zoom. A good example is the LAP board traditionally meets in conjunction with the council, but I think Robin has already indicated that they don't intend to meet that week. At least maybe they'll meet that week, but they'll meet virtually. Am I right about that, Robin? It just is kind of as an example.
Yes, we already decided we will meet by Zoom.
So what I was proposing is I'll go through the list of the groups that traditionally meet in conjunction with us and make a recommendation to the officers about ones that could meet by Zoom the week before. I think the more we simplify what we're trying to do in Asheville, the better. Just in terms of making sure that we're not creating risk for people, we're not violating any of the governor's orders and all of that stuff. So that's the way I'm planning to proceed, but I would like to know that you all are in favor of that approach.
I am. I think we ought to send Sharon out to Asheville for a week to explore all the options and make sure that she has a good expense account and stuff.
Yeah. Alice, I guess I am in favor with one caveat. I would not like to say right now that the advisory members can't come to the meeting. I feel like in a sense, they've been meeting by Zoom, which is hard on them too. And I just hate that they can't come to a live meeting. That's sort of
Barbara, that's fine. And in some ways not having them there creates some real technical hurdles. One question I've had in my own mind is whether that creates any kind of liability for us. So Catherine and I will look at that and maybe give you all a heads up on that.
Well, I think, we make it, if people don't want to come, I mean, you may have a counselor that doesn't want to come. I mean, maybe we need to assume that we're going to have to try to have some technology available anyway. And on the vaccinations, I guess this is going to be an ongoing that you want people to report, not just during the meeting. Because I noticed you said fully vaccinated, report if you're fully vaccinated. So since, a lot of people only became eligible last week or week before, they couldn't be. And I'm only halfway vaccinated, so I haven't turned my name into you. But the vast majority of people that have gotten one shot are going to get two. I almost wish we'd asked that, but if you want to.
Ask them about the first shot. Well, I can do that. I can send an email and ask them that, I guess it was more of a timing issue for me. It was like, well, Sharon just seems to have something.
Alice?
We've probably had about 40 or 45 people already reply. So we're really good in the game on those numbers.
Are we finding out about their significant others that they might bring with them?
Some of them are telling me that both are vaccinated. Some are not telling me that. Okay. I don't think we asked that specifically. That's just something that they're giving on their own.
Yeah.
How was there an email sent out about that, asking the counselors to let you know? Because I don't remember getting that.
There was an email. Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. I didn't, when it was sent.
And Barbara, do you still want to, remind folks of that at the council meeting on Friday?
I will.
Okay. I'm doing a cheat sheet for the council meeting for the officers, so I'll include that.
It would be real helpful if we know if they're going to bring somebody with them too, because if we're going to have a dinner, I think whether it's a dine around or whatever, it'd be nice to know, what percentage of the people are possibly going to be vaccinated.
So once we get a little further down the line, Darren, and we have a better sense of what it's going to look like, we'll ask. We can make the ask. If they voluntarily provide that information, that's fine. We just need to make it clear it's voluntary.
You can do that, at that point with a Google poll or something, a doodle poll. I mean, that's it. I think you get a better response because people just, do it rather than having to stop and send an email. And at that point, I don't think you need to know. You just need the information.
Okay. All right. Marcy, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I agree with Barbara about the advisory members. And I know David Allen had already expressed that he really wanted to have advisory members there. Is there anything wrong with asking advisory members to voluntarily give the same information about the vaccinations?
I don't think so.
I mean, and Sharon, I know I've already
we're
told
just
you.
Gonna comfort on our numbers because I don't think, we're not going to have a report saying you didn't get it, you can't come.
No, I'm just putting an X when I get a reply email. I'm not keeping up with anything else. I'm just a little X and that's it. And I'm the only one who knows that. Alice doesn't have that. Nobody has that.
I think what we're going to find is that, let's just say you asked people, have you had one or both shots or do you intend to? I think we're going to find pretty high numbers. And if that's what we're looking for is comfort, I doubt we're going to get 100%, but,
I think it's going to be a high number too. But I mean, so are you thinking about sending another email out asking about spouses or anybody that may be a guest as well as the advisory member?
Maybe later. Is that what you?
Yeah. That's my preference, is to wait a little bit until we have a better idea of how this is going to work.
Right.
And we're going to need, if they're coming, then we need to know if their hotel room stuff anyway. So, we could make it all part of that same thing. Although for the planning purposes, I think, when we look at rooms and, capacity and all that, I think knowing whether folks are vaccinated or not could be relevant to how we set up the rooms and how much space we have to have in the rooms and all of that. So far, I think the governor's orders have, with regard to gatherings, have referenced vaccination, although I have heard, I think, from the public health, the person who heads up public health, that if you're a group of people who are fully vaccinated, it's okay for you all to be indoors, but we should keep the size down or something along those lines. But I don't know there's been any official kind of statement about that stuff.
Well, at the rate of reopening in the last couple of months, I mean, we've got 3 months from now. I mean, we could very well be just slammed wide open by then, or we could be all slammed shut. I mean, who knows? But
Yeah.
But we are trending. The rate of opening up is increasing. So, all right. Is there any other new business? Barbara, do you have something else you wanted to say?
Mm-mm.
Okay. All right. Is there any other new business?
Just let me check, Sharon, was there something else that we needed to get clarification on that I've forgotten?
No, I don't think so. The hotel is working on a tent for outside, which would mean we could have a reception and a dinner out there, because you can have 100% participation. Their parking lot is sloped, so they're really having to make sure that whatever they put up there is very secure and it doesn't catch the wind. But they're working on it, so that's a good first step.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other business, Peter, can we just adjourn and go